Ron, and I wanted to ask you how you dealt with it because, you know, the Alamo as an, this is such a historical event that that took on again in a way, in a lot of ways, like Crockett, a life of its own after the siege. And I tried not to go down these rabbit holes because there were some references to, and people wanted to believe that Crockett escaped, and so I wondered how it was for you in focusing on Travis's slave Joe, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like there must have been stuff that also came out that you thought, I don't know if I believe that. And then you have to, like you said, you spent 11 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's that's got me
Most
beat.
of that was I traced him all the way back to his birth in Kentucky and his original slave owner, and then through documentation was able to follow him to Texas. But as far as that went with Crockett and getting to the Alamo, I mean, like I said, he had already been this iconic, American folk hero already then. But I just really tried to stay with the primary sources and the eyewitness accounts, and even those were. He was clearly a leader at that time, and I think the biggest challenge I had, and you probably know this for sure, but a lot of folks who study the Alamo, they are still debating to this day how he died, and and there's evidence on a lot of different angles to it, but that's probably the most controversial thing with him is, did he quote surrender? Did he,
Right.
and I read the part of what you wrote, and I was wondering if you had any issues with that when you were going through it, because I mean it's
Yeah.
always
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult because, especially with a figure, I mean, when you're touching on elements of patriotism and the desire to have a narrative that is heroic, I think a lot of people didn't want to see, I mean, because the way, if you buy the Mexican,
right, De La Pena.
basically yeah, De La Pena's
Yeah.
version of it, it's pretty inglorious for the end of these defenders because, Santa Anna ends up rolling in there and just saying, put them all to death. He had already said no quarter. And so in the end, I mean, it looks to me like, Crockett fought for as long as he possibly could. And then he's down to like a handful, maybe six or something, survivors who maybe are thinking, well, we'll see what's going to happen. Crockett's not an idiot. If he figures out might be a way he can sneak out, he would try it. But then they're just, summarily executed and put into a funeral pyre. And so, I mean, at least that's how it was hard to write that last part because you're like, you want, and there are famous paintings of him going down swinging with the butt of his rifle, which aren't really rooted in the historical record, but certainly they did. I mean, the Mexicans did breach the walls. They were certainly in there. There would have been hand-to-hand fighting. There's no question about that. So I guess you try to do as best you can and be able to be true to the record and not fabricate. That's sort of my litmus test.
Yeah, I try to stay on that lane too. It's like my friend says, she always says, this is what I think today based on the evidence I know now. Ask me tomorrow when new evidence comes in, because history can change with certain things. But the way I kind of dealt with it is I knew there was evidence that there had been some who were, brought forward at the end. I believe that. I believe Crockett could have been one of them. And my take may not be popular, but I think even if it was him that was one of them and was executed or went down fighting, and that when he realized that all was lost anyway, I think that almost makes it more heroic in a way, because to be one of the last men standing in that chaos and that battle, that's pretty impressive.